Hello, friends. This is Keith Joseph from the Institute for Hermetic Studies. I'm with my colleague today, Jacob. Remind me,
Mammano.
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 I'm learning how to pronounce his last name. Jacob is like me, an aspirant in the Institute for Hermetic Studies teacher certification program. Today, we're going to be talking about this monograph from Mark, among other things, Child of the Sun. And there's a section on here on the Shem angels. And so we're going to talk about that. Jacob has a little experience working with them. So I'm really interested in hearing about his experiences, and then we'll try to think about the theory and maybe even ways that you might be able to implement some of this stuff in your own practice. So the conversation between us started because we had been discussing in a different context lucid dreaming, and I was bemoaning my difficulties with mastering lucid dreaming. And so Jacob had sent me some of this Shem angel stuff and said, this is something that you might incorporate to be a more effective lucid dreamer. So uh, Jacob, what do you, maybe to start with, how would we use, or how are the Shem angels connected to, maybe even before that, what are we talking about? Shem angels, what is this all about?
Well, thank you for having me, Keith.
Yeah,
It's
of
really a
course.
pleasure.
Great. It's great for us to be together, and hopefully this will be the beginning of many collaborations.
Most certainly. So the angels of the Shemhamphorasch are, to make a long and maybe convoluted story short, are a series of 72 angels that are said to rule over 5-degree sections of the zodiac. The names of these angels were derived from a gematria-like manipulation of a certain passage in Exodus, where Moses is confronted with the pillar of fire, or something like that. So you end up with these 72 names of angels, and they're each they each have attributions and certain things that they rule over. And coincidentally, the one that came about when we had this conversation about being bad dreamers was a Shem angel that rules over revelation through dream. And a particular grimoire that I had picked up recommended a working. Many people do different kinds of exercises with the Shem angels, but this particular working involved asking for revelation through dream. So, I had the opportunity to conduct an exercise where I asked for revelation in dream about revelation through dreams, and it was pretty interesting.
So wait. So you did this. So there's an angel that is kind of in charge of revelations in dream, and that angel is now in its ruling sphere of the zodiac.
Correct. That particular angel rules over the 20th to the 25th degree of Gemini.
So then you worked with that angel recently.
Last night I did that.
Oh, awesome. Cool. So can you share?
I would love to
Yeah,
share. I would
all
love
right.
to
So
share.
yeah, so
So now,
I'm interesting. Go ahead.
usually I'm a terribly poor dreamer. I have very little dream recall. That's on a fantastic. I usually need to have 9 hours of sleep. It usually happens in the later hours of the morning, if at all. Um, and last night I happened to be very short on sleep, and we can go into why maybe a little later. But even after doing this practice, which involved writing out a prayer, a certain psalm verse that's associated with the angel, um, writing out his name on a clean piece of paper, put it under your pillow, and that's about it. You recite the prayer 3 times before bed, and you're supposed to do this 3 consecutive nights in a row. So last night I performed that, and it was pretty interesting. 2 times in the morning, because I was so short on sleep, I hit the snooze, so I had an opportunity for it to happen twice. Um, the moment that my alarm went off in the morning, there was a drastic action being taken by one of the dream characters. Either I remember one was like a film. So, and that may seem simple at first glance, but there's real evidence of some kind of precognition going on there. What element of my subconscious is aware of the time down to the second that my dream could reflect the very moment that my alarm would be going off in the morning? Pretty interesting stuff. So I feel like that that was pretty insightful as to maybe the mechanisms behind the dream, which is that I think that's enough evidence to
And
show
you
that get some stuff from this.
and you remember the dream also, which is is part of the process, right? Lucid dreaming, we're trying to at first just be aware we're dreaming, remember the dream, and then manage to control our dream. So you were able to remember the dream this first night. And last night was the first night that you did it. So you have
Last night, yeah,
two more
last night was the
nights.
first night, exactly, and I'll have a little more time to sleep tonight. Last night, the reason why I was so short on sleep was because after our and I think this might be relevant for a conversation for anyone that is having any difficulty with the dream practice. Native to Southeast Asia and Europe and now North America is mugwort, and it's a very useful plant with a very long history of being used for dreaming. And consequently, I was going through a box and I found a 2.5-year-old tincture of mugwort that I hadn't completed working on. And I actually started it. If you recall, I mentioned it at the very beginning of the practice sessions when they began.
I do remember you mentioning that you were collecting mugwort. Yes, yes.
I found that. I made a tincture. I found that tincture. So I went and gathered materials, and I started putting together a tincture that maybe we could experiment with and document the use of that. See how that works.
Yeah, excellent. So maybe backtrack for 1 second. Mark has said that there's three main practices that the Institute is kind of promoting, and we think that these are like the kind of crucial practices for this time and place. And they were the assumption of the God form, the inner fire, and lucid dreaming, right? And all of these kind of are different aspects or lead to the construction of the body of light. This is the kind of great work that we're kind of aspiring to. So lucid dreaming, we think, is really a crucial practice, and so it's definitely worth developing. So I want to work on this. So I like this kind of, it's kind of simple. Probably other people are in the same boat. You work all day and it's hard for me to practice in the evening. I do most of my stuff in the morning, and when I'm going to bed, like I can get a prayer in and then I want to just hit the pillow. But this kind of, it's from what you're saying, that's kind of what we're basically doing, right? Once you have that preparatory work in, it's a couple prayers and hitting the pillow. So
That's really it.
it's manageable.
That's really it. And we have, of course, with the Institute, we have our practice of focusing on the throat center before bed, our particular, dream yoga practice, if you will. But I found that that's so incredibly simple, and that's the beauty of that practice. But it's so difficult for me to keep up with it because it's so very simple. I usually just conk out.
Right.
So having to write down very nicely on a piece of paper, a prayer, just write down the fact that you're looking for a revelation through dream, and you've gone to bed with that expectation, and you've put some juice behind it by getting the paper out and getting the pen and working it and placing it under your pillow. It's much more active than just simply visualizing a throat center, which is probably a fantastic supplemental practice if you can manage it.
Right. So the challenge with something like visualizing the throat is that you're doing it when you're already in bed. And like you're saying here, this is something you kind of can do beforehand. You're still kind of awake. You're not just like ready to fall asleep. You can do it. And maybe just for I just have the Child of the Sun open. This is not any angel in particular. This is just a sigil of the angel.
Correct.
And what it looks like. And so that's in this book. I don't think all 72 are in here, but there's some particular ones chosen. So if somebody wants to take on this practice, they could start with the ruling angel of the of the period that they find themselves in. Is that right? Is that the way to?
Correct. So there would maybe be three schools of thought on this. You would have the you would work with the ruling angel that's ruling over that particular section of the decan, that half decan of the zodiac. There's also significations for I believe minutes, groups of minutes throughout the day, where the entirety of the 72 get run through a 24-hour period, and you can catch an angel at that moment.
Kind
And
of
then you would obviously be arbitrary workings, which people do in conjunction with demonic evocation. There's a school of thought that invokes and binds an angel of the Shemhamphorasch, and before invoking its demonic counterpart, the 72 goetic demons and 72 Shem angels. So if someone wanted to start working with it practically, you could have, the providence of finding yourself in a good, position. But keep in mind that the way to work with them, as put forward by Lazar Linane in the Divine Kabbalah and the science of Kabbalah, that all of these workings hinge on a revelation through dream. So no matter if it's, an angel that rules political conquest or diplomacy, or making up with long lost lovers, at the end of the day, this man is prescribing that any of these revelations come through dream.
So in some way, any of the ones that you're working with, you could do a lucid dreaming practice, or you could do a dream practice with any of them.
Essentially, that's the goal: is to induce a lucid dream in which the angel or representation of it will be instructing you in this dream. You would say that that's the pinnacle of the practice.
Right, right. I mean, that's also how, I mean, not for nothing, right? But that's how Mary was, the revelation that she was going to have a child was through an angel in a dream, right? So it's not it's a traditional practice that.
Yes, we live in the light of revealed religions.
Right, right. So in that case, the key thing would just be to figure out. So say I'm interested in doing this, the key thing would be to figure out kind of what the ruling angel is, and then work it. And that angel rules for a period of like 3 or 5 days,
5 days.
roughly 5 days. And then you would switch to the next angel in this circuit.
Yes.
And for the dream practice, balancing it with the goetic is not a crucial thing, or do you think that it is?
That would be more of the ritual. That would be more the ritual magic side of things. So this you would call this more of the mystical path that you could work with the Shem angels. Pretty much just an invocation and a request for revelation in this particular wheelhouse that this angel occupies.
Right, right. No, that makes sense. And I've been thinking about this a little bit, the relationship between mysticism and magic is that relationship, right, between kind of rising on the tree and having that kind of union with God, and then the ability to manifest in the material world. That's the magic aspect. And I think it's probably a mistake, and maybe even a dangerous mistake, to pursue magic without having some level of unity with the divine under your belt, right? Because then you're just working on your own ego power to manage what are otherwise probably forces that are more powerful than you. Does that make sense?
Well, you can even prevent a bar fight if you have enough friends with you.
Right, right. No, I think that's right, right? Some people can't even command themselves, and they are expecting to command demons, right? Some people can't even stop themselves from eating a box of Doritos because they stumble upon them. How, if you can't control yourself, how are you going to control an entity, right? Yeah.
And well,
So
the basis of ritual magic depends on an appeal to authority. What you're doing is going, I'm the boss of you because I know your boss and his boss, and I know his boss, and in the name of, I command you.
right,
So
right, right.
that's You really can't go into you really don't see any kind of demonic evocation without some kind of appeal to the divine beforehand,
Right.
putting on the full armor.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a great point. I sometimes at work people come in and say they know the guy's name on our building, like they're a but I usually they're full of it. But they do it. Um, cool. So, all right. So the dream practice and then the kind of ritual evocation. And now, when I was kind of going through, it's been a while since I read Child of the Sun, but I did kind of review it. There's other things that you can do with the angel other than there's like meditative things that you can do also. Is that right?
Perhaps. Well, all of these angels, remember, they're based on gematria, you know, manipulations of the Hebrew alphabet. So essentially, they all come down to mantras that you can employ them in that way as well.
Oh, so interesting. You mentioned to me, I think briefly, that the sigil, there's some controversy around the sigils. So if you go to the book, right, there's a sigil in the circle there, that there's some issue around the sigil, but then there's a mantra aspect also, if I follow what you're saying, right?
Correct. You could find that kind of dichotomy in the way that you would think about the practice. Those with more of a sympathy towards the, you know, the ritual evocation side of things probably are drooling over the sigils. It's important to note that if you can get your hands on a certain, I'll give you a link for the book. I can't recall the title right now, but it's a grimoire that's essentially a compilation of a lot of work about the Shem angels, and they have indexes on these sigils and how they've evolved over time. And some of them just completely take a turn. So it's really, if you're calling this the energy of this being, and you know, your name is Keith, but I call you Beef, maybe you can get what I'm saying, but it might not work the right way. Maybe it annoys you that I call you
I
Beef
was
enough
about I was
times, you know?
about to say my name is a little weird because it's the E, it's not the rule, it's the E before the I, and people often misspell it. And like when I see my name misspelled, like it really, it's just like a rock in your shoe. It's just like, you're not like that mad, but it's annoying. Like you're like,
Even
and
that,
it
you know,
just
and
looks bad to me. Like,
yeah, and there's a way for someone to get a warm welcome from you, and then there's a way to get a sort of what do you want,
right,
and you can
right,
see
right.
you can see that if you work with these in any kind of capacity in any extended amount of time, you know that not everyone's your friend, as above, so below, you know. So and there's a note in this book that, you know, we were talking about that dichotomy of the practice. You have the sigil, and you can, you know, fanboy out over the sigil, or you can go more towards these associations that they have with the Latin Vulgate Bible, and they have these psalm attributions, and they have this particular attribute of God the that these angels represent the 72 attributes of Yahweh. So, you know, you could go more of that literal route with the writing out of the prayers, the recitation of the prayers, and kind of stay away from anything that resembles, you know, evocation, if you will.
So, so the the angels' names are divine names that are um derived from like the tetragrammaton. Is that right? They're like,
No, those are, maybe you would call the zodiacal angels, or the geniuses of each of the 12 houses of the zodiac. The angels' names are, you write out in Hebrew, I believe it's Exodus 19, 20, and 21. You copy out the letters, you go through the lines one direction, then the other direction. You create a cipher, and now you have 72 trigrams of meaningless words, to the end of which half are added el and half are added ia. So that gives them their divine attribution of either El or Yah, and turns them into an angel.
so that's really interesting, right? So they're just kind of deriving it as if the book is like a secret. There's like a secret revelation within the words,
Correct.
that you can derive. Yeah, that's cool. That's
There's even a passage in the I believe it's in Exodus, or maybe this is, extra commentary, but it said that this 72-fold name of God was used to part the Red Sea.
oh, right. That's pretty awesome. What the great thing I love about that is like the historical people, like the academics they just can't wrap their mind around that.
Yeah.
That is the best. Um, that's great stuff, man. Let's so if someone were to do this practice, there's the dream thing we talked about. There's the potentially working with the sigil, but also working with the prayers and the names. You vibrate the name or not really?
I have done that in the past. I've done a more evocative type working, with the sigil and candles and frankincense and the whole nine, and really put some juice behind it, and it got some pretty interesting effects that made me question the efficacy of going that way. I believe in our particular school of thought, we don't like to rock the boat maybe that much, and we prefer more smooth,
Oh, interesting.
gentle kind of practices. So I would probably recommend, the recitation of the prayer, which involves the name. It involves, the calling upon of the zodiacal genius that rules over them, and it's a very business-like transaction. You know,
So right. So there's potential of creating just too much force and not really having. I mean, maybe it's good, but maybe it's not. And you're just not you're not in. Mark has that essay why angels can be douchebags, right? I guess that's
during one of these workings, I had my censer that I was burning my frankincense on top of, and you would have sworn that I had caught a bird inside of it. So this is not. It can get really.
right,
It can get really interesting really fast. The
right,
breaking the
right,
law of physics kind of interesting.
right.
So I
Which
don't particularly recommend going about it that way.
yeah. I mean, so I see that people sometimes can be attracted to that because it gives them makes them feel like they have some proof, but um it's not really a useful. I mean, that's not really the way to increase your belief in faith per se, right?
Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God.
Right. Good point. Um, um, yeah, so this is great. Is there any other experiences or things on this practice that are important that we should know about if we're gonna kind of take it up? We have the grimoire to work out maybe, and then there's this book, the child of the sun has a fair amount of instruction in it on different ways of working with the Shem angels. Is there anything else that we should know about if we're going to go ahead? I'm thinking about, getting on the dream practice, and there's instruction here for that as well.
Yes. Yeah, and then keep in mind, any of these angels, if they have anything to say to you, you put it in the context that you're there to reveal it to you via dream. So any of these workings can dovetail perfectly with a really active dream practice. But one thing that I want everyone to keep in mind is that you can't take these things out of context. This is not just something that you pick up off the shelf. It takes place within the larger milieu of the Judeo-Christian cosmology. So it's important to keep in mind that it's said that these angels they were created to be under the command of humans in grace. So that brings in the moral and ethical and ritual purity type aspects that are really necessary if you want to have some success doing anything like this.
So that's a interesting point. I've been using in Mark's Kabbalah Health and Wellness. There's a purification practice where you imagine the sun and the moon, and they kind of form a triangle. And um, that I really like that practice, and I kind of like it better than just like a banishing ritual. Only because I feel like it's more it's more purposeful for what at least I'm trying to do before I go into some other meditation, right? I'm just trying to clear out my mind and purify it. But the other thing that something I was thinking about, and when you were speaking, remind me of one of the things about the esoteric, right? The outer teaching, which would be like that just 10 commandments, basic ethical thing, and then the esoteric and even the initiatic. When you're at the initiatic level, the way that you understand those exoteric, those outer kind of Sunday school teachings, you start to understand why, right? You start to understand why why you want to act this way. And a lot of it is to make your practice easier, to make your initiatory practices easier and more effective and just smoother. Like, for example, when I first started meditating, your mind is kind of agitated, and a lot of that agitation is just bad interactions with people, not even unethical, just unpleasant, not where like I wasn't being thoughtful in the interaction, just so it just creates like agitation in the mind. And if you can eliminate that just by having kind of smoother interactions, your meditation goes better. And then you kind of want to act that way because your practice goes better. And I think that, with what you're saying, that is part of it, right? The way that you kind of act in the world is going to have an effect on your ability to be an effective in these other practices.
Exactly. And as Mark reminds us all the time, if any kind of transformation is to take place in your life, it's going to take place through your nervous system. This is going to be an experience that you have in your life. You will always be the filter, so you could be really getting the kind of things that you want, but just coloring them poorly because of what's going on in your mind. So that's the first thing to do, and that's really the moral and ethical teachings are there to probably lead you down a path in life that reduces chaos or the chance of chaos as much as possible, because those kinds of things will happen. Working with the angels, I want to put this warning out there very clearly for people that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Really, after working with a handful, I needed to stop, because really what's happened to me is I've pretty much gotten adult onset ADHD. My mind has gone absolutely haywire almost overnight within the course of maybe 2 weeks. So, these things are not without risks, but that's given me a lot of resistance to work against and grow in my own right. But we have to keep in mind it'd probably be a better idea to stick to the moral and ethical teachings beforehand and
Right.
not have to cross that line and do all of that
Right,
cleanup.
right, 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 right. And have some of your life in order too, right? It's not something you want to engage with if things are already chaotic in your life. You might just be
Exactly.
adding adding another layer unnecessarily to that.
Well,
Um,
if you're asking for anything, you're immediately, conjuring the reason why you don't have that thing, And if you're looking for more peace, perhaps an angel won't drop peace in your lap. Maybe they'll amplify the things in your life that are preventing you from having peace, just so you can see them and notice them. So, but if
r-
someone asks me what do angels do, I say sometimes they just ruin your freaking life, man.
yeah, yeah, no, that's a really good point, right? If you're seeking a virtue like patience, then how do you actually gain that except through opportunities to learn patience?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. No, that's right. That makes sense. If you're trying to get stronger, you're gonna have to push against the resistance. There's no other path. Um, so Jacob, this is great. Let's most definitely do this again. I had a great time. I will post those links that we promised in the description, and I hope this is helpful to others and useful. Please leave a comment, a like, a subscription. If something that you have questions about, I'll definitely be reading the comments. Jacob will check them out too, and we will see you in the next video.